Hey, what's up, guys and gals? So today I'm going to deviate a little bit from the norm and I'm going to share something with you because at some point in time you are going to need to create some kind of graphic for yourself. And you can always hire professionals to do it, or you can hire, something like Fiverr.com. If you go to Fiverr, you can get images there, not images, but somebody to create an image for you. So for example, if you're creating a logo, you can get someone to create a professional looking logo, but you can see it starts at $75. So, which is not bad if you need a professional looking logo, but sometimes you may just need to create some simple assets that you want to create for yourself and all that. And so using vector graphics is one way to do it. Now, what logos and all that, you want to use vector graphics. You don't want to use uh, bitmaps or JPEGs or anything like that. You want to start, and you don't want to use something like Photoshop. Photoshop does some nice work and everything, but that's mostly for images, actual images, but not vector images. So, and the difference between vector images is that if you use something like Paint, right? So you're not going to use Paint, of course, but let's say that you did, and you save, say for example, something like this, and then you resize it, and you change it to something like 80. And you notice how it gets all wacky. Now we can zoom in and you see how it gets all pixelated, the colors have changed and all that. And it's even worse when you go up the other way. So like, let's say for example, that you still had a star and you create this star. Well, every little pixel that you see there is going to show up in the bigger star. So let's say that we resize this to a bigger size. And now we go to 800. And let's zoom back out. Let's go back to 100%. You notice that's all pixelated. Well, vector graphics will automatically adjust and remove all that pixelation. So that's why you want to use vector graphics. So let's give Inkscape a try. Now I tried earlier recording with a different system, and the problem with that system was that it kept hosing my user experience with the with Inkscape. So let's see if this works. Give this a try. So we have an image, and I can zoom into the image by just pressing Control and the mouse wheel, and I can go up or down. So I'm just using Control, the Control key, and the mouse button. Now the thing about Inkscape is available for Linux, Windows, and Mac. So no matter what operating system you're using, it's available. I'm pretty sure Adobe Illustrator is also as well. But like I said, with Adobe Illustrator, which is basically the rival competitor to this, or alternative, however you want to look at it, you're going to pay a monthly subscription. So let's say, for example, that I wanted to draw a star. I can hit Control. I don't have to hit Control. I can just drag it there. But you notice how it doesn't. I can't really know for certain if it's straight, but now if I hit Control, it'll hold it straight. So let's get rid of it. And let's try it again. Let's try to start again. This time I hit Control, and you notice it holds it straight up and down. And is that a perfect star? You can always adjust the stars. One thing that I didn't know is that you can change the ratio, and I think the ratio is like 3:7. Or something like that. I don't know what the exact size for a perfect aligned star where the lines go from one end to the other. So you can do that. So one thing about the star, for example, is that you have colors, and you have all these colors you can choose from down here at the bottom. I say that I wanted to make a yellow star. So I can go to my colors and I can just select and set the fill to that. Didn't take it. Oh, because I'm not selected. So I have to select the star first of all, and then I can set the fill. I can right click and set the fill. And then you notice it still has a black border around it. So I can set the stroke as well and set the stroke, and now the color, or I can even set the stroke. If I go all the way to the left over here, I can remove the fill. I can click on here where it removes the fill, and I can set the fill to nothing. And now you notice that. I can also change the stroke. Now you notice you have this pane on the right side, and and it has a lot of different things. One of them is here. If you expand the set fill and stroke, I can actually take my stroke and I can increase the width of that stroke. So to whatever you want, right? For example, there. And you can do things like that. Say, for example, that I wanted to create this star right now is this. So I go back to star, select it again. And and sometimes with some of this stuff, you have to select things up front, and it just makes it that much easier. But let's say that I wanted to actually have more points, and let's say I want it to be an even, so let's say 10. And let's say that I set the fill, let's set the stroke and the fill, set stroke. Actually, we want to set the fill to black and set the stroke to no stroke. And then let's say that I wanted to take another thing like a circle, and let's say that I take a circle. And notice when I drew that circle, it kind of moved on me. So what I want to have a perfect circle that's same radius all the way around. So what I can do is use Control key and draw it. And let's go back to circle here. And let's say that I hit Control, and you notice now my circle stays proportional. So let's say that for this one, I'm going to I can just drag it in here, and now I have a spiked ball. But let's say that I wanted this circle to be centered on here. So I will take this circle in this star, and the way you do that is you hit Shift key. So I select it, hold the Shift key, and I can select multiple. You may be used to using the Control key to select multiple items in other Windows programs, but in Inkscape it's a little bit different because you have to actually use the Shift key. So now I have them both selected, and you can see that they're both selected. So one thing I can do is, you notice I have this align and distribute. Now every tool that you have here, you also have here, so you just got to find it. For example, I think that if I didn't have that menu showing up, I can go down here and just select align and distribute, and this will show up. Now this gives you a lot of options. You can take more than one object. For example, what I want to do is I want to center, I want to align their centers horizontally. So this is the one for centering them on a vertical axis, right? So that's what I want. And then I also want to align them vertically, right? Or on the horizontal axis. So now it's centered. So one thing that I can do with these two, and I have to use the Shift key again, and I can do something like this where now I take the object, and I can take and do a union. And so now this becomes one object. No matter what I select, I can no longer select that individually. Now I can sometimes, if you don't want to do that, you may have to figure out a way to go back around that. So let's say that I wanted that, but that looks a little bit, it's a little bit done. So you can always use Control Z. So let's see, I take Control Z. And Inkscape crashed on me. Got to be careful with that Control Z. So let's go ahead and open up Inkscape again and try it again. And that's one of the things that I kind of have this and it crashed on me. And Inkscape will do that. So what I recommend is that you save frequently. So let's go ahead and give it a try again. So let's go ahead and create a star. And we want it with about maybe 12 points. And let's go ahead and select it. And how big do we want it? Maybe about that big. And then we can take and set the fill to black and set the stroke to nothing. And then let's take a circle, holding the Control and dragging it. So we can always increase it in size. Let's see, is that the size that I'm looking for? That's about the right size. So now I want to align them. And so hitting Shift again, selecting one, selecting, holding down the shift key on the keyboard, and then I select them both, and I want to align and distribute. So I want to align the centers vertically and horizontally. And so now what I want to do is I want to take these two, and what I want is I want to join them together so it's a union. So now it's one object. And at this point, I can hit Control Save. It'll save my drawing. And notice it's going to save it as a SVG. That's okay. That's your work file. So that's okay. If you want to export to PNG later, we'll export once we're done. But for now, we just want to be able to save our drawings. So we are going to save it in just pictures and maybe create a new folder called Inkscape projects. And so let's go ahead and save it there. And we'll call this a gear. And I took this from another tutorial. You can look it up on YouTube, but just this basic idea, I took it from another tutorial on YouTube. So now what I have here is I have this. And so I want to actually create a gear. So I want to get rid of all these points. What I can do now is I can take another circle and just make a bigger circle. And let's see. And I'm going to change the fill just so we can see it. Set the fill to this and remove the stroke. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now one of the things that I can do is I can send it to the back. So one way I can send it down, now this is not layers. There are layers as well that you can do. That way you can log layers and not worry about the layers above. But what I want to do is send it all the way to the bottom. Now I can send it down one layer, or I can send it all the way just straight to the bottom. Sometimes you have multiple, and they're all layered one on top of the other. So I send it to the back so I can kind of see it. But now if I select that and I hold the shift key again, and now what I want to do is I want to align these centers again. So that's a pretty big gear. So what I want to do is I want to have my gear down a little bit. So holding the control and just kind of decreasing it a little bit and maybe moving it up. Let's see, move this center. That's still pretty big. So let's go ahead and select it again and decrease it maybe there. Let's see. That may make a pretty decent size looking gear. But now what I want to do is I want to center them again. I want to align them. And I always forget to hold shift. I use control, but control doesn't work, of course. So now I want to align them vertically and horizontally. So now I have that. So now what I want to do is I want to be able to cut these strokes off. So how do I do that? So there's different ways, and I don't know the exact for that. So what I want to do here, what I got is a intersection between the two. So an intersection is basically when you have, there's different things that you have with the with two objects. And let's say that I have two circles, right? And let's remove that one. Let's create another circle. Let's say that I have two circles. So let me create one here. Create a circle here. And I want to set the stroke to black and remove the fill. So I set the fill to nothing. And let's say that I can take this circle and I can hit Control D. Control D, now I have two circles. Okay, so let me select this. Oh, it's not letting me move it. Okay, so I have two circles. So what I mean by intersection is where these two, this circle is one piece, this circle is another piece. And if I take these two, for example, and let's say that I set my fill to, let's just set them to red. And let's set this fill, let's take the other one and set the fill to yellow. You could see earlier where they intersect, right? But so what I want, if I want to join just the intersection, which would be that piece in the center between the two would be the intersection. So if I take these two and I say, for example, here, and I want to take the intersection, you notice what it does. It takes where they both share that common intersection. So let me undo that. And so there's another thing. So if I wanted to do like union, it would union both of them. So now they become one. That's not what we want. So let's go ahead and Control Z to undo that. So the other thing that we can do is take these two, and there's just a whole bunch of things, and we could do the exclusion. So that where they both intersect, in other words, it'll get rid of that. So now we have that. So that becomes that two, like two kissing Pac-Mans or something. So you get the idea. And there's other ones in there, and sometimes you have division. So let's Control Z this. Let's see what division does. So we take this one and this one, and we take the objects and we use division. So let's see, back here again, and we use division. You notice what it does. It's kind of a weird thing that it does. So this, hit Control Z again, and let's see if there's one more. So we take these and now take and we cut the path. That's another way to cut something out. So we cut the path, and let's see, Control Z. I'm not sure exactly what that did. And it didn't do what I expected it to do. But anyway, you get the idea. So in this case, what we have here is we want to take the intersection of these two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take this, and like I said, I always forget to hit the Shift key, I hit Control. So now I'm going to take these, and I'm going to create the intersection, and the intersection will give me a gear. So let's see if it works correctly. So I'm going to take the intersection. Now I have a gear. And no matter where I go now, I have a little gear. So one of the things about it is that by hitting Control D, I have another one right on top. So I could actually create two gears, and I can take, and you notice I can increase the size. So for example, I could take and decrease the size of this, but maybe I don't want to, have the same size stroke. So that creates a problem for me. So let's say that if I made it with fewer gears, that it would be different. But let's work on one gear at a time. So now I have kind of a gear there. And so let's say that I want to create a circle for the center. So I'm going to create a circle for the center, and I'm going to drop it right in there. And that looks about right. So let's say I have this circle. Now I want to be able to center them both. And first of all, I'm going to just make the stroke to nothing here, and set the fill to black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and hit Shift again and select both of them, and I'm going to align them. So once I align these two, then what I want to do is maybe take the division in this case. I'm not sure exactly how I cut this out, but let's just give it a try. So let's say that I take the path, and see, it's not exclusion because I don't want exclusion, and it may be the difference. I'm not sure. Let's try that. Yeah, that's what I want. I wanted the difference. So now I have a gear here that looks like this, and we can do some interesting things with that gear. So let's take and create another gear, and this time, this had 12. So let's create one half the size with 6. So let's go back to the exercise again and take a star. But this time, we only want 6 corners. And we're going to make it about half the size. And we are going to create our gear. And hitting Control, I'm going to go straight up. I'm going to go straight up like this. And now I am going to create, maybe I want it to be smaller. We'll see. We'll fit it in there. If it was smaller, it might actually fit in there as a gear. Yeah, where they join. Maybe a little bit bigger. Maybe we give it a few more points. Maybe make it 8. Okay. So now we have this gear. Oh, Control Z. Yeah, always remember. And now, as I said, you always want to continue saving. So let's go ahead and save this while it's still there. And so let's go ahead and take this gear, and now let's take a circle. And let's make the circle a different color just so we can see it. Set stroke, set the fill, set the stroke to nothing. And let's take this circle and put it center of that. And let's see, that might be a little big. We want it to be a little bit smaller. Maybe smaller. That might be about right. And so what we want to do is, once again, to center it, hit Shift and select the other one. And now we can go ahead and center them on each other. And what we want to do now is take these two, take these two and take the intersection of that. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Control Z. We don't want that. So we Control Z. So let's try it again. We actually don't want the intersection in this. In this case, we just want to join them together. So let's go ahead and take and join them together. So to join them together, we're just going to do a union. And then we take another circle. So let's go ahead and create another circle. And this time, we are going to take this circle and just let's change the color. Set stroke to nothing. We already have the fill, so let's go ahead and make it a different color so we can differentiate. Set the fill to that, and let's take it, and like I said, let's take it down to the back. Send it all the way down back to the bottom. And of course, we want to take and center these on each other. So hitting Shift, we center them. And now what we want to do is take the union of the two. So let's make sure we select this. Okay, and we select this. Now we have them both selected. And we are going to take the intersection where they both intersect. That's what we want. So let's go ahead and take the intersection of those two. And so now we have another gear. So let's create another circle to make the inner circle of this. So let's take another circle. And let's set the fill to black. And let's set the stroke to nothing. And so we take that circle and we're going to center it in here. But you notice it's still, this one's a little big, so we're going to reduce the size. Maybe that's what we want right there. And now, of course, if you move the mouse around and stuff, you try to center it, you can't get it quite centered. But if you just take and select and Shift again, go ahead and align them once again. So now they're centered on each other. And now what we want is we want to take and do another. And what we want is, we want the division, right? No, that's not what we want. So let's see. Let's try it again. Let's take and do, let's see. Do we want the difference? Yeah, there we go. So now we have two gears. And now I can take this gear and put it against this gear. And I can move, I can use my arrows to kind of move it around, right? So we want those gears kind of be in line, kind of like that. Now there's a lot of play in these. Of course, we can make this a little bit bigger. Oh, and I forgot to use my Control key. Control key keeps it all in proportion. So let's see, that might be a little bit better. We still need to make it just a little bit bigger. And you notice I'm having trouble moving things around with the arrow, but one option that you always have is, you notice up here, you have your X and Y coordinates. So you can actually move it. Like right now, maybe I want to move it down a little bit. It'll move just a little bit at a time. And maybe I want to move my, well, this is moving it left and right, but maybe I want to move it down a little bit, and this, my Y will move it down. And maybe I want to move it to the right a little bit. And now I have two gears. So there you see how I have two gears. Now there's a lot of things you can do with these. And one of the tutorials that I saw, and you can go check it out. I'm not going to steal his glory, and I'm not going to try to steal his work. And I kind of got this idea. I pretty much got this idea from him, but he created one gear. You can create, for example, you can create, copy this, just hit Control D, move it out here. And one thing you can do, let's change the fill color just to any other color. And I can take this gear, and there is an effect. It might be path. There's something called inset. I'm not sure how to get to it. Object. It's not in layers. There it is, inset. So you notice what it kind of did. I don't really like the way it did it. It's not supposed to do that. Actually, what I probably should have done before I did this inset is probably created a circle this size instead. See, what happens is I can now put this in here. And like I said, I can move it around. Right, I can move it around. But there's before I do that, there's some other things that I want to do. And say, for example, I can take this and I can add, I think it's an effect. And I don't think it's, let's see, path, inset. It's not text. So you can add shades. Let's see, aluminum. Oh, I don't like that. Like I said, you can always Control Z. Let's save it while we're at it. Let's save this. And so there is an inset, not inset, but there's a 3D filter that I'm looking for to make the gear kind of 3D. But maybe that's not what you want. Image effects, edge. No, film grain, sharpen, move. That's not what we want. 3D wood. That's not what we want. 3D overlays. No, we don't want that. I'd have to look it up, so I'm not going to bother with that. But hopefully this gets you somewhere. This gets you going with some of this stuff. But that's just one of the things. Let's go ahead and take this gear and let's get rid of this, because we don't need this anymore, and we don't really need this. So let's say that we wanted some better colors maybe for our gear. So maybe we take this and give it that color, and let's take this one, and I don't know. I'm so horrible. I know colors when I see them, but I don't know how to pick them. So let's just give it this, let's say this for now. And let's say that you had another thing that, let's say, for example, that you wanted to create some letters going around here. What you can do is you can create another circle. And let's take and create a circle. And that's probably not big enough. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's see. Still not big enough. Did my circle just change? I think my circle is not quite right. So let's go ahead and try another circle once again. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's take this circle and send it to the back. So send it all the way to the bottom. Let's move that gear out of the way. Let's take this circle and this gear, and let's take the circle and the gear and center them on each other so they're centered now. And one of the things here that I can do with the circle is I'm going to set my stroke to black. And then I'm going to set the fill to nothing. And I'm going to duplicate the circle. So what I want to do is I want to put some text around this, and I just made this just big enough so that it'll be big enough to be on the outside of this circle. And then I'm going to move it into that location. But for now, let's move it out here. So another thing that I want to do is I want to hit, let's see, Control D and create a smaller circle. Really, 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 really small circle. And I want to take and make these two circles centered on each other. And you can see the little small circle. You can barely see it. We have to really zoom in. And let's make this stroke, actually I can go to fill, set, fill, and stroke. And I'm going to set the stroke style pretty big. So what I want to do is I want to take and set the stroke just bigger so we can see it. And I'm going to make it even smaller. Really small. There we go. And so now what I want to do is I want to take and hit Shift again and select both circles, because I want to actually center them once again. So I go to Align and Distribute, center them. And there's a reason for that. Just bear with me for now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I'm hitting Shift, not. So that circle is inside of there, and that's just kind of to show the center point of that circle. But what I want is I want to do text now. And the reason I want to do text is because I want text around this gear, because we're creating kind of a logo. So let's go ahead and create. So let's say that we had a makers forum or something like that. And so I'm going to type makers, right? And maybe I want it to be spaced out a little bit. And I want to change the font on these. So let's select the font. I don't have a lot of fonts. I imagine that you can install some fonts and have something better. So what if we made it bold? Would that be better? Yeah, that might be better. So we can take the font now, and we can take this object and take this object and select Shift. And I can take and say, I think it's text put on path. And you notice how I put it on path. Now, but the unfortunate thing is that it puts it down here. And I can rotate this right now, but you notice if I rotate it, it disappeared. So let's hit Control Z. So if I rotate it, it's not going to rotate like I expected. So that's what this little center circle comes in. So if I click again, and you notice this little point, and I'm going to increase it a little bit. I'm going to take this little center where it rotates. I'm going to drag that over center of that circle. Uh-oh. I want it dead center on that circle. And it's so small. If I just get it close enough, that's close enough. So now, when I take and rotate this, it'll rotate around the circle. And so you can kind of see where it's kind of top dead center there. So now I can delete this circle at this point, but you'll notice if I do that, then it goes back to this. So I don't want to do that just yet. So what I do want to do is I want to take, and I think I can just say object to path. And now I think I can delete the circle. And I can delete this inner circle. And now my makers is there. So now what I want to do is I want to get rid of this. And I can bring my makers right there. Now I can adjust it a little bit with the arrows. See where it looks right about right. I probably should have left the other circle there, but see right about there. So I have my makers, and of course I can change the font. Now I can actually take this object and ungroup it. And so now I have these individual objects. So now one thing I can do is I can take this, and let's say that I wanted to play around with making the fonts a little bit different. So I actually have nodes here, and there's ways that you can add nodes. I don't know them off the top of my head, but let's say that I want to maybe make this a little bit like this, and and maybe I wanted to play around with this, just kind of give it a different style so it don't look like a standard font. Now this one's going to be a challenge because this one actually has curves. And there's also ways to reduce the number of, and maybe we want to increase this so we can see it a little bit better. Maybe we want to move this out here like this. You get the idea. And I don't like the way this S is. Let's see. Still looks a little quirky, but of course you can play around with it. Let's zoom in on this one and maybe make this a little bit better. Not crazy about that idea, but let's see. These things is the thing is that the better you get at it, and I would recommend maybe a tutorial on how to do this better than I'm showing you here. And that might help out a lot in terms of getting exactly what you want. I still don't like this S. I don't like it because it has these things here. kind of goes against what I'm trying to do here. That's not what I want. Let's fix this. And it's still a little bit jagged there, but I think it'll do. So we kind of have this Makers logo. And now let's bring this one back in. And we don't want that, we want this. And keep in mind that we can rotate a little bit too. So there we go. And so we have our Makers. And maybe we want something going across, or just something that maybe shows something, or just we could actually have something that's out here. So let's create another circle like we did earlier. And we want to make it around the size of this one here. So let's just stop there for now. You get the idea of what we're doing. So, but let's give this a better color. Let's pick maybe, yeah, that. Makers. And so hopefully that gives you some ideas. Now with a lot of this stuff, right? So if you have like a lot of objects, let's say you had a whole bunch of objects like this, you can actually take these objects and the alignment and distribute, right? So sometimes you may want to have the objects be a certain size. So you have where you can resize them here, right? That's the width. Let's resize the height. But it's not making them the same size. So sometimes the best way to do it is to say, okay, well, what I want is just copy this, and you can hit Control D, or you can hit Control C and Control V, and just do something with that. So if you have this, and let's say you had a whole bunch of these, and you want to line them up, of course, you line them up horizontally. Oh, see, you have to select them all. Let's select them all. Okay. And we want to select them, sort them like that. And then you want to distribute their spacing evenly. So there's this spacing to distribute, and it'll align them. And you can align tops, align bottoms, whatever. Like, let's say if there were different sizes, you could do that. So you could do a lot of different things, you know. But so if we want to now take this Makers, and let's say that we don't want this. One of the things about this is that when you go to save it, a lot of this where there's no image, it'll be transparent. So a lot of times if you go to show it on a page or something, it's going to show all that transparency. So sometimes you might want to actually put a background to it. So you might want to create a something like this. And I just like to create set stroke, set fill, and maybe make it big enough, and send this all the way to the bottom. Take these and put them in here. Now, as long as you got this work, you can always come back and adjust to make copies, make changes. stuff like that. Let's say that I wanted to see what it would look like with maybe a different settings and stuff like that. I could take this and Control D on the whole thing, and then just take and make a copy of it, and then modify the copy. So it's always good to make copies of them if you're not sure. And so, like in this case, let's say that I wanted to export this now. Let's say that I want to save this. So first of all, I'm going to save my SVG. Now the SVG is not something that you normally share. And what you actually want to do is export it. So first of all, you got to select where you're going to export it to. So like in my case, I go to Pictures, and let's say where I have projects, and I might call this Gears PNG, right? Because I want it to be a PNG. And I save it. And then I can export this. And there's different ways you can export. You can export the entire page, or you can export the selection. I think that's in here somewhere where it says, see, you can select custom or selection or drawing, so, or the entire page. So I want to just export the drawing. And I already told her where it's going to go. So now I click export, and you can actually select close when complete. I wouldn't do that. So I save it. And so now it's going to be here under pictures, and it's called Inkscape Projects Gears. So I can go find it, and I should be able to go to pictures, Inkscape projects, and there you see my gear. Now I can open it up with whatever programs I have available. So I can open it up with even Photoshop if I wanted to, or Paint or something. And you can see the project there. And that's really all there is to it in terms of just beginning. There's a lot of things you can do. Like I said, look up the videos, because there's a lot of ways to take an image that's out there and vectorize it. You can import an image and then vectorize it, and then actually add more nodes. And what I mean by nodes is, if you actually look at, when you look at something like this and you see all the nodes, you can move those nodes around and change something differently. So for example, if I take this node and I put it out here, now my gear has changed, but of course I don't want that. And you can take this Bezier and really draw some really interesting things. Now there's different options for this, and you can draw, right? Or you can use this side and really draw your points. There's point drawing where you and you really get good at it and figure out where all your points got to be, and it just kind of curves around whatever you tell it. And you can always switch modes if you want a straight line, and then you go back to let's say here, and you can draw some pretty cool stuff with that. But there's so many things you can do. Now the thing about this is that I can always increase the size of this. Let's say that I wanted a larger size, because right now my image size is this when I'm exporting it, but I can actually change the size that it exports. So for example, I can change the width to half the width, half the size. $300. And so let's say that I want to change the name though. I want to change it as Gear 2. And I export it. Now if I go back to my folder, you notice I got it in a smaller size. And if I look at these and I just open it with default, you notice that there's no pixelation. I mean, there is pixelation, but of course it's intended for that size. But if I open up this one, you notice there's no pixelation. Now, if I start trying to increase it here, then there will be a pixelation, but you can take that SVG drawing and save it to whatever size you actually need. So you can make big ones, little ones, and they'll always be okay. So that's really all I have for now. Hopefully this will inspire you to go out and create your own, look up YouTube videos or whatever, what else you can do with Inkscape. But it's really good for drawing just like 2D images and stuff like that. And there's a lot of effects too that you can actually make. There's some really, really realistic stuff out there. So for example, if you go look at YouTube and you look for 8-ball, with Inkscape. This guy, he actually created this with Inkscape, and he shows you step by step how to do it. So he takes you step by step how to create that 8-ball, creating all the effects, and it looks pretty realistic by using gradients and different circles and shapes and all this stuff, and you eventually get to that. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. It's not just like flat 2D drawing, but you can actually create some pretty cool looking effects. It won't do 3D because it's not truly 3D. It's 3D looking, but it's not 3D. 3D objects, of course, have, you know, the 3 dimensions. But this will actually, you know, get you some pretty realistic drawings as well. So you can have a lot of fun with it. So anyway, that's all I have. That's all I wanted to share this time around. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, if you think that I should do more videos of this type, just give it a like and put your comments below. Or if you think I should be sticking with programming, then go ahead and I'd like to hear what you think. Well, anyway, thanks for watching.